A major cyber attack affecting more than 150 countries and hundreds of thousands of computer users continues to spread. Christian militants renew their attacks on the United Nations base in the Central African Republic. And what's behind the sharp spike in food prices in Kenya? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin with an aggressive wave of cyber attacks on Monday that has hit companies and public institutions worldwide with so-called ransomware, wreaking international havoc and bringing many services to a standstill. Europe's police agency Europol says the attack has already affected more than 100,000 organizations. With 45,000 attacks in 150 countries, ransomware is a type of computer malware that infects a target system, locks and encrypts all files, then demands a cash payment from the victim in return for reversing the encryption. A cybersecurity expert explains what organizations are most at risk of having their computers infected.
They're going after organizations which are mission critical, where they really can't live without their data for too long. For instance, we've seen most of the UK healthcare system shut down because most of the hospitals under the National Health Service plans are completely shut down. They've lost access, and in fact, they're turning patients away.
Well, the ransomware encountered Friday, which caused havoc at hospitals in Britain, is a self-replicating piece of software that spreads from computer to computer as it finds systems that have not been shielded from intrusion.
Organizations as well as end users really need to pay attention to keeping their systems up to date. When your service providers are providing you patches, you've got to make sure you're on top of that. But as enterprises as large as Telefonica that have been impacted today, they really need right tools for monitoring their users, monitoring the activities, building education and awareness programs for employees on what types of links they should or should not click, and ultimately monitoring their environments proactively.
Well, the cyber extortion attempts appear to use stolen Microsoft Windows-based software developed by the U.S. National Security Agency for its intelligence gathering purposes. It was later leaked to the internet. Several cybersecurity firms say they have identified the malicious software in upward of 60 countries, including the United States, though its effects in the U.S. did not appear to be widespread, at least in the initial hours. Well, now in West Africa, two cities in Ivory Coast are in the midst of a mutiny by disgruntled former rebels who have been integrated into the security forces and were promised paid bonuses they never received. Gunfire was heard Monday in the city of Bouaké, the country's second largest city, and at several military camps in Abidjan, the country's economic capital. It is not immediately clear if there were any casualties. Ivory Coast has launched a military operation to take back Bouaké, where at least one civilian was killed on Sunday, and reports say more than 20 others were hurt when they ignored warnings from the rebels to stay in their homes. The mutinous soldiers seized Bouaké Friday. One rebellious sergeant, Yakubu Soro, told a reporter the soldiers are not looking to take over the country.
This is to say to Mr. Ouattara, we are not here to destabilize him. Or well, people say we are going to attempt a coup against him. We are not here for a coup. We want the money. He said in front of everyone here that he should pay us 12 million francs. Of this 12 million, he gave 5 million. The rest of the 7 million, where were we supposed to have that money? We have a little group that they took hostage in Abidjan, where everyone saw on RTI. They told us to leave that money.
Well, many of the rebellious soldiers were part of a 2002 coup attempt that split the country into a rebel-held Muslim North and a government-held Christian South for several years. Well, in the Central African Republic, armed militias are targeting Muslims in the remote town of Bangassou. In recent days, the militias have killed up to 30 civilians and 6 UN peacekeepers and wounded many others. That's according to the UN Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in the CRR. MINUSCA's chief, Parfait Onanga Anyanga, says the mission is sending reinforcements to Bangassou, where displaced civilians are seeking refuge in a mosque, a Catholic church, and the Doctors Without Borders hospital.
La MINUSCA a déploré
MINUSCA deplores 6 dead. It is extremely deplorable with tens, to be exact 11, wounded. Now, it is too soon to give precise statistics on the number of dead following the violence, but it is clear that we are looking at numbers that could easily reach 20 to 30. Now, it is too early to pronounce ourselves on exact numbers. The situation is extremely deplorable, and we are doing everything to fairly rapidly retake control of Bangassou.
Well, it was the second attack involving peacekeepers in a week in the CAR. President Faustin Touadéra has condemned the attack.
The
attack against the peacekeepers of MINUSCA represent grave crimes for which they will be held accountable before national and international law. In these days to come, I will go to Bangassou to give all my support to the wounded population of this part of the country, innocent victims of these barbarian acts. The Central African Republic will never, I mean never, be abandoned in the hands of death brought by those who reject our peace process.
Well, aid workers in CAR have warned that the country may be sliding back into conflict. Now, tens of thousands of people have fled violence in the countryside over the past 6 months. More than half of the population relies on humanitarian aid, but the UN says relief efforts are dangerously underfunded. Now, the killings of 5 UN peacekeepers in the Central African Republic this month points to the continued insecurity in the southeastern part of the country. That violence has had an impact on public health, with the southeast reporting a rate of HIV infection that is 3 times the national average, as HIV-positive residents struggle to get treatment. Zach Badoff reports from the town of Zimio.
This remote part of the Central African Republic sits at a crossroads near the borders with South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Here it's a crossing where everything converges. It's why the level of HIV is high. And also a lot of rebellions, a lot of rebels pass by Zemio and Obo. Also, lots of refugees are here too.
The rate of HIV infection in the southeast is 13%, though aid workers say it could be higher. Stigma and local tradition can prevent testing.
People believe in the power also of nature and traditional doctors. So bush doctors, shamans are also very present in the community, and then mixed with actually the lack of education of the people and of the community, it makes that they actually lack the knowledge.
More than 1,500 people now come to Zemio's only hospital from as far away as Uganda for the free HIV treatment offered by Doctors Without Borders.
When I did the test and found out I was positive, my husband said he does not have HIV, so he left me the same day.
Once a year, Agnes Davaraguni walks 45 kilometers to Zemio to get a checkup as part of her treatment. The journey takes 2 days.
The roads are very insecure. I don't have a motorcycle or the money to pay to get here. There's a lot of fear to travel on these roads.
Bandits and rebel groups, including the remnants of the Lord's Resistance Army, all move around the area. Residents worry the security void will worsen with the departure of Ugandan and American forces in the next few months. Doctors Without Borders developed a new community approach where patients work in groups to bring back antiretroviral drugs in bulk every 6 months, reducing travel time, costs, and exposure to risk. Farmer Moise Wele picks up the antiretroviral drugs for 30 people and drives 2 hours down the road to his village Kitesa.
It was really tiring for me to come each month to the hospital, but now this program helps a lot with this problem, despite the insecurity of the LRA that is growing.
Doctors Without Borders is transitioning out of the area at the end of the year and is handing over the administration of the program to the Ministry of Health. Zach Badorf for VOA News, Zemio, Central African Republic.
Well, the World Health Organization says the Democratic Republic of Congo is once again facing an outbreak of the contagious and deadly Ebola virus. Now, Congolese Health Minister Oli Ilunga announced Saturday that 3 people have died of the virus in the northeast of the country. He urged people not to panic and says officials are taking all necessary measures to respond to the outbreak. The WHO says it is working with Congolese authorities to deploy health workers in the remote area where the 3 deaths occurred, all on April 22nd. 11 other cases are suspected in the area. The WHO Regional Director for Africa visited the Congolese capital Kinshasa Friday to discuss disease response. Now, the remoteness of the affected area, 1,300 kilometers from Kinshasa, means word of the outbreak was slow to emerge. The WHO says specialist teams are expected to arrive in the area known as the Likati Health Zone within the next day or 2. This is the first outbreak of the virus in the DRC since 2014, when 49 people died of Ebola. Now, in the United States, the search is underway for a new FBI director after President Donald Trump fired James Comey last week. VOA's Michael Bowman reports intrigue continues to mount after the White House offered conflicting rationales for Comey's dismissal, and the president hinted recordings may exist of his conversation with a man who, until last week, oversaw a probe of alleged Russian interference in the U.S. presidential election.
From jurists to lawmakers, a wide net is being cast for a nominee to lead the FBI.
These are outstanding people that are very well known, highest level, so we could make a fast decision.
Trump continued to make headlines after firing Comey in televised interviews and via Twitter, where he appeared to threaten the former FBI chief and hinted that recordings may exist of their conversations.
You have this very bizarre statement by the president that there may exist private tapes.
Warner serves on the Senate Intelligence Committee probing Russian influence.
I don't have the foggiest idea whether there are tapes or not, but the fact that the president made allusions to that and then the White House would not confirm or deny, first of all, we got to make sure that these tapes, if they exist, don't mysteriously disappear. So I've asked, others have asked to make sure the tapes are preserved if they exist.
On NBC television, Trump claimed Comey asked to meet with him in January so as to convey a desire to remain on the job at the FBI. The president's account does not match the recollection of someone who interacted with Comey shortly before the FBI director dined with Trump at the White House.
I spoke briefly with Director Comey about the dinner. He conveyed to me that he'd been invited, and he was, and this is my characterization, uneasy with it, simply because of the optic or the appearance of potentially compromising his independence and that of the Bureau.
Republican lawmakers are facing tough questions in their home states.
No one's disputing the fact that the president has the right to hire or fire an FBI director. He made that decision. It's been made. I think what's important now is that we make sure that there is a qualified and capable person that people have confidence in to take over the FBI.
Democrats, meanwhile, are united in demanding a special prosecutor to probe Russian influence and whether there was any collusion between Moscow and elements of Trump's inner circle. Democrats say a politically independent probe is more urgent than ever after Comey's dismissal.
To fire him mid-investigation, boy, oh boy, that raises a whole lot of questions.
Comey declined to testify behind closed doors on Capitol Hill this week, but is reportedly eager to speak in a public hearing that could be scheduled any day. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, Emmanuel Macron is officially the president of France following an inauguration ceremony Sunday in the Elysee Palace presidential residence in Paris. Now, Macron became the president when the chairman of the Constitutional Council read out the results of the May 7th election, in which Macron defeated far-right leader Marine Le Pen.
En application des articles 6, 7 et 58 de notre Constitution.
In order to be the man of one's country, you must be the man of your time. You are now the man of your time. And by the sovereign choice of the people, you are now above all, the man of our country.
Well, Macron says he will do everything that is necessary to fight terrorism and authoritarianism and to resolve the world's migration crisis.
France's mission in the world is of utmost importance. We'll take our responsibilities to bring an appropriate response to the great modern crisis when necessary, be it a migrant crisis, the challenges arising from climate change, authoritarian temptations, the exercise of world capitalism, and of course, terrorism.
While Macron, 39, becomes France's youngest post-war leader and the first to be born after 1958, when President Charles de Gaulle put in place the Fifth Republic. Now we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com, and find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now coming up, closer look at Kenya's soaring food prices. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Well, Kenyan consumers are being hit hard by a rising cost of food commodities across the country. Retailers in Nairobi have not only increased the prices of basic food, but also rationed one of the most essential food items consumed in nearly every household in the country. Africa 54's Esther Ewart has our report.
The price hike for food is causing many Kenyans to struggle, but urban residents are feeling the pinch even more as supermarkets limit to 2 kilograms the amount of maize flour each customer can buy. The cost of maize flour jumped by 1/3 to 145 Kenya shillings, equivalent to $1.45 from the same period last year. There is anxiety among Kenyans as they prepare to vote for president and parliamentary representatives on August 8th. Some critics are blaming suppliers who want to make huge profits by hoarding essential food items during this electioneering period. The cost of bread, milk and sugar have skyrocketed, and in some supermarkets, the staples are unavailable. A Nairobi-based economic analyst explains the business system.
You have friends and acquaintances who are well positioned, who quite often are funding the political parties, and they're able to get the licenses from the authorities to import sugar. Now, they don't want to import sugar when the differential is $1 per ton. They want to import it when they're going to make windfall profits of hundreds of dollars per ton.
Kenya is also experiencing drought following low rainfall last October and November, leading to a shortage of agricultural products. Matthew Howie shops in Nairobi.
In the last month, it's gone up. It's shocking because I think just 2 days ago, I bought 3 items. It was eggs, a few cakes, and I gave my 1,000 bob expecting change, and there I was being asked, you need to top up. So I know it's definitely is a concern, and I'm hoping it has something to do with the drought, and now that the rains are here, definitely we're hoping the prices should come down.
The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data shows that prices of food and non-alcoholic drinks have increased by 16.5% annually, affecting the price of staples such as bread, milk and maize flour, leading to lifestyle changes and consumer patterns, especially among the poor. Kenya's parliament is considering measures to curb climbing food prices. The issue has also become a political liability for President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is seeking a second term during the August general elections. Analysts warn that current high food prices could affect gains Kenyatta's government has made if Kenyans go to the polls under the prevailing conditions.
It's a dangerous place for the incumbent government to be in, facing an election in August, with food prices still not tamed and still climbing.
The government recently announced plans to import approximately 100,000 tons of sugar over the next 3 weeks to make up for the shortage caused by drought and the current inflation to remain above target, meaning Kenyans will likely continue to dig deeper to put food on the table. Esther Githui-Ewart, VOA News, Washington.
Well, during a recent visit to South Sudan, U.S. Senator Chris Coons observed the devastation caused by the country's ongoing civil war. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee member says the United States is uniquely positioned to use its leverage on South Sudan's leaders, while at the same time developing a more efficient and robust way to deliver aid. Now, viewers, Ian Bior has more.
Millions of South Sudanese civilians have fled their homes, seeking safety from the civil war, while millions of others have departed their homestead in search of food and water, as famine grips 2 parts of the country. Aid agencies warn that famine could spread to other areas if immediate action is not taken. After visiting South Sudan's Unity State and Uganda's Bidi refugee camp with Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee in April, Senator Coons told an audience at the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington last week that U.S. diplomats and lawmakers must develop a comprehensive plan to urge South Sudan's leaders to end the conflict.
We have to find a way towards a meaningful peace process in South Sudan. President Salva Kiir can and should be a part of that process, but so far he has failed to show the leadership we would expect of a president. The United States, I believe, will step up and provide further pressure.
Senator Coons is a co-sponsor of the Food for Peace Reform Act, a bill that, if passed into law, would eliminate regulations that require food aid to be grown in the United States, then shipped overseas to places like South Sudan. Coons says that process normally takes weeks, if not months. By adding reforms to the current Food for Peace program, Coons says the U.S. could save about $500 million a year and reach up to 8 million more people far more quickly than under the current regulations. Coons also wants the U.S. State Department to appoint a special envoy for Sudan and South Sudan, a position that has been vacant since January. As the conflict has spread to previously peaceful regions in South Sudan, thousands of citizens continue to flee the country. South Sudanese citizen Char Paul, who now lives in the U.S., has grown weary of failed international efforts to stop the fighting in her country.
It is nice that they're helping out financially, giving aid, but just giving money, taxpayer money, it's not good enough. We need to get to the bottom of what's going on. We need to hold Salva Kiir accountable for all that are happening in South Sudan, because his family are not there, but other family, children and women, are the ones that are suffering in the camp.
Brian Adeba, a South Sudan analyst with the Enough Project based in Washington, says groups like the African Union and the Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission, which is responsible for overseeing the peace agreement, need to step up.
I think it should. I think when you look at the regional organizations that are involved in this peace agreement and its collapse, they're missing in action. They're also bedeviled with fractions among themselves, and so U.S. leadership is essential. The U.S. has a lot of tools and leverage that it can utilize to bring the parties in the conflict to the negotiating table, and I think it's about time that that is used.
At least 79 aid workers have been killed in South Sudan since the conflict there erupted in late December 2013, including at least 12 this year alone, making South Sudan one of the most dangerous countries for aid workers.
The situation in South Sudan is that there are multiple actors in the South Sudan scene. There are several armed groups who are running about in the country, and it is very difficult to make accountability as to who killed the aid worker.
More than 3.5 million South Sudanese have been forced to flee their homes, including more than 2 million people who are internally displaced. The UN Refugee Agency has asked for $781 million to meet the growing needs of displaced populations in the region. So far, only 11% has been funded. Ayan Bior, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A Eurovision winner makes history and returns home to a hero's welcome. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In South Africa, political opposition argues that a parliamentary vote of no confidence on embattled President Jacob Zuma should be conducted by secret ballot. In Ivory Coast, soldiers opened fire in two largest cities of the country amid mutiny that followed paid dispute with the government. In the Central African Republic, the UN says hundreds of civilians are seeking refuge inside a mosque in the border town of Bangassou amid ongoing attacks by Christian militias that have killed up to 30 people. In Kenya, developers are being pushed to fit homes and buildings with solar panels for water heating. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what's trending. It was a hero's welcome for 2017 Eurovision Song Contest Salvador Sobral. He won with a jazz-style ballad written by his sister, taking the top spot for the first time in Portugal's history. More than 100 fans gathered at Lisbon's airport to sing his winning song, Amar Pelos Doors, and received Sobral, who was escorted through the crowds by police. Sobral says he hopes Portugal's hosting of the event in 2018 will help to boost tourism in the country. Well, and finally, could this be the future of transportation? Or rather, let's first talk about these football-mad Argentina boys. For years have been encouraged to play football for decades, but now women who love to play are being introduced into mixed amateur teams too. Now, according to FIFA, more than 265 million people in the world play amateur or professional football regularly, and 9 out of 10 of them are men. However, women's football is currently the fastest growing sport worldwide. That's according to the International Football Congress. And could this be the future of transportation? A Berlin-based startup wants to revolutionize urban mobility with 3D printed smartphone-controlled skateboards. They're operated by simply tilting your phone and can even be assembled at home. It has a range of 10 kilometers, a top speed of 30 kilometers per hour, and one electric engine driving the wheels. Now, the full kit to make the board at home costs 499 euros, but you will also need to have access to a 3D printer, either at home or at one of the 3D printing centers that are becoming available in most larger cities. And that is what is trending, and that is our show for today. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This idiom sounds like it might have to do with football, or maybe basketball?
Good sport.
What makes something, or someone, a good sport?
Hey Anna, I am really looking forward to going to dinner tonight with you and your friend Caroline.
Shoot, can we change dinner to tomorrow night? Work